will begin the webinar on Beyond the Pandemic and After the Elections. I'm Melissa Joles with RDA. Gene Marks is a CPA, owns and operates the Marks Group, and is your presenter today. We would like to start by thanking our manufacturer partners who continue to support us in these challenging times. Your contributions allow us to offer these valuable training seminars for the RDA members and their sales teams. Thank you. The presentation will take approximately 90 minutes. We are recording it and will make it available to everyone attending. If you have questions after the webinar, you can follow up with Gene directly. We will provide you with Gene's email. Now, I will turn it over to Robert to kick off the presentation and introduce Gene Marks.
Well, thank you, Melissa, and welcome. Welcome to today's webinar. We're so thankful and happy that you're here with us. And we've got the man in the house. We've got Gene Marks in the house. He is a friend of RDA and our industry. I believe he's spoken at 2 of the RDA events, and I know I've seen him at least 2 of the PBES segment meetings in the past. That's where I got to know Gene and come to learn a lot more about what he speaks to and the value that he does present. Now, he is a former columnist for the New York Times, the Washington Post. He currently writes covers for politics, public policy, the economy, technology trends for small and mid-sized businesses for a lot of different magazines, and newspapers, some that you will recognize. For example, The Guardian, The Hill, The Washington Times, The Philadelphia Inquirer, Forbes magazine, Entrepreneur magazine. As Melissa said, he's a CPA. He is an author of 6 best-selling books. The current one now is, Do You Want More Cash? 100 plus strategies for increasing your company's cash flow this year. Great book. You need to get a copy of that. He appears very frequently on Fox News, Fox Business, as well as the ABC radio network on the John Batchelor show. I've also seen him on other syndicated radio programs across the U.S. He owns and operates a 10-person financial management and consulting group and near and around the Philadelphia area. And wow, what an exhaustive list, right? Very impressive, very extensive. You will be impressed and very engaged, let's say, and informed during this next few minutes that we're going to spend together. We certainly are privileged to have our friend Gene Marks in the house. And with that said, I will not take up any more of his time. Join me in welcoming Mr. Gene Marks to the RDA group and our RDA partners. Take it away, Gene.
Robert, thank you very much. I appreciate you guys inviting me on to speak with you. And Robert, Melissa has told me I can actually go on, for about 3-4 hours today, which I really appreciate because we have a lot to cover. I'm just kidding. We're not going to go for 3 or 4 hours. I've got about 90 minutes that I'm going to spend with you, and we're going to do a little bit of talking about what's going on in the world. And yeah, guys, as Robert said, I mean, I write in a lot of different places, and I speak a lot of different places, and we have a lot of clients in my firm, and a lot of people I deal with on social media, even today, because I wrote a piece for The Guardian today about trying to put political differences aside, depending on who you do business with, things like that, where I engage with a lot of business owners. And I have to tell you, as we all know, this has been like a crazy year. And as we're heading into the winter, it is apparent that the uncertainty is still very, very significant as I speak right now. I mean, so, and I hate to use uncertainty as a crutch or as an excuse for why we make the decisions that we make. But, I have to admit, I mean, going into, we have a new president that's coming in, it seems. So, that we have a president-elect, Biden, but we also have, COVID obviously in the air. And we don't know what this new administration will do. We do know the cases are significantly rising. We also know that lockdowns are being considered around the country. We're seeing what's going on in Europe right now, in England and in France, and that is definitely a concern. And we're trying to figure out when the economy is going to recover, all these things. So what I want to share with you guys today in the 90 minutes that I have is of all the business owners that I talk to, the leaders, the executives, the managers that are out there. There are some big issues that we're facing. Some of them I already mentioned, but more importantly, there's some actions that people are taking. And I think that's where, as fellow business owners, because I have 10 employees, that's what we're all looking for, right? I mean, we're all looking like, okay, we know what the issue is, but what are like people, at least smarter than me, what are they doing, right, to navigate their businesses around these issues so that they can survive this whole thing, and not only survive but profit and then grow. we got to make some decisions right now. We got to be looking ahead. We got to be making some strategic investments. We got to be thinking about where we're spending our money or not spending our money, so that the people that rely on us, our customers and our partners and our friends and our community and our employees and all the people, their family members, they're relying on us to make the right decisions, and that's what we've got to do. So I'm going to go over with you some of these issues that we've got right now, and I'm going to help you with some actions to take. And again, these aren't my actions because I'm not that smart. These are actions from like a lot smarter people that I've interviewed, that I know, that I work with, and that our readers of mine that I'm engaging with online and at conferences just like this. Now, if you look over here, that is my email address. Please make a note of that. When I'm done this presentation, I'll give it to you again. If you want a full copy of the PDF of this presentation, just email me when we're done and I'll be happy to send it to you. If you have any questions about anything that I'm discussing, by all means, just email me as well, and I am more than happy to respond and engage that way. It would be, it would be just good. So can't really take any questions during this. However, that doesn't mean that I cannot ask you questions, because I will be doing this. Because for many of us, it's like after lunch. I realize if you're on the West Coast, it's a little bit before lunch. But let me tell you something, regardless of where you are, the day is moving on. We're later in the week. And, who knows how much attention you're going to spend. It's very distracting looking at this from home. I want to make sure you're paying attention. So I'm going to be asking you questions as we go along through this, just to make sure that some of this information is sinking in. Right now, I'll give you an example of the question I like to ask you, like this one, for example. True or false? In 1969, the Apollo 11 astronauts were required to fill out customs forms before returning to Earth. Do you think that's true? Do you think that's false? It's actually true. Not only is it true, this is the actual customs form that the astronauts were required to fill in when they were returning from it. It literally says they departed the moon on July 24th, 1969. So guys, if you think that we've got immigration issues today, dude, they've been around for decades, for hundreds of years, right? Nothing's really changed, even back in 1969. How about this, true or false? In 1974, so that his 3,000-year-old mummy could be flown to Paris for necessary repairs, the Pharaoh Ramses II was issued a valid Egyptian passport. Do you think that's true? Actually, it is true. Not only is it true, but let me tell you something. This is the passport that was issued to the guy. And not only that, well, that's Keith Richards. Just thought I would throw that in there. All right, true or false? 10% of Americans think that chocolate milk comes from brown cows. Actually, it's false. It's 7% of Americans think that chocolate milk actually comes from. It's a little example of the kind of question I'm going to ask you. Right? Here's a serious question. When will the economy recover? Now, we have to admit here, right? A lot of us went through the 2009 recession, where we heard a lot of different, people couldn't even tell when that recession was going to happen. And now we're hearing now from a whole bunch of people and a whole bunch of resources, a whole bunch of experts in the media telling us when the economy is going to recover. I mean, Treasury Secretary Mnuchin, a good man, says that the U.S. economy may be out of a recession by the end of the year, right? Not only that, Wall Street, although it fell a couple of hundred points as I'm speaking today because some concerns about COVID, it's still up over 29,000, which was the highs that it was before COVID after falling so much. They think the economy is going to be recovering pretty fast once things get behind us with COVID. However, a group of economists from Harvard recently came out and said that the U.S. economy is in a disastrous downward spiral. And another group said that, well, the depression might be over, but the recession is about to begin. And somebody says, no, the recession isn't over. It's about to get much worse for some. So, even the Federal Reserve Vice Chairman just said a couple weeks ago, the U.S. economy will take years to fully recover from coronavirus. Now, you hear the experts, you hear the pundits, you hear the academics, you hear the economists. They're all giving their opinions. So here's what it is. Here's really what it's all about. They really don't know. Nobody really knows. Right? Who knows how impactful COVID is going to be? Who knows if we're going to go into a lockdown or not and send the economy into another recession? Who knows, when the vaccine will be widely available for everybody to use, and therefore things get by. All these experts, they really don't know. But here's the thing: you got to know, and I got to know, because we have people, like I said earlier, that are relying on us to make some decisions. We have got to look at the stuff that's going on around us. We got to make decisions about where we're going to spend our money, invest our money, when we're going to hire people, or we conserve our cash. And we got to base it based on where the economy is going. So we need to make those decisions. Now, there are some green shoots that are out there that's good news for us when it comes to the economy. For example, gross domestic product That went up 33% in the second quarter after dropping 31%, sorry, 33% in the third quarter after dropping 31% in the second quarter. So that's certainly good news. That's on an annualized basis. The Federal Reserve released its Beige Book report just a few weeks ago and said that businesses in these industries, including retail, are now starting to struggle to find workers, which is interesting to hear as well. Unemployment claims, just as of last week, are down by half since the beginning of August, and the unemployment rate, which came out last Friday, says now under 7%, certainly a significant decrease from what we were seeing in April and May. The personal savings rates are now twice the monthly average at 15%. It was as high as 30% back during the April and May terms of COVID. That's a big reason why people are now spending money on cars and houses, because they've been able to save some money and they're taking advantage of low interest rates as well. So that's good news as well. And finally, retail sales increased about 1.9%. Now, having said all of that, a lot of these metrics that you see behind me are not the kind of metrics that I think you really want to pay a lot of attention to when it comes to running your business. I mean, gross domestic product, the unemployment rate, retail sales, first of all, those metrics in a lot of cases are surveys of information from the Census Department, from surveys of from Department of Labor, for example. Secondly, when they come out, they are oftentimes revised numerous times. So you never really hear about the final numbers, only the initial number that comes out. And finally, they can be very, very politicized. I don't really, listen, when GDP number comes out, unemployment rate comes out, okay, I'll say that's interesting. I'll take notice of it. But those are not the metrics that I'm using to drive my decisions. Now, I've known a lot of economists over the years. I've talked to a lot of different people. And over the years, and particularly over the last few months, I've come up with 8 really good metrics, little known metrics that you probably haven't heard about, which I am looking at almost every week or every month, that are gauging to me how the economy is doing, whether we're in a recovery, and how fast the recovery is going. And I'd like to share those 8 metrics with you. Is that okay? Now, I can't hear you, so I'm going to assume you're saying it is okay, because if it wasn't okay, that'd be a big problem, because I got like 20 slides coming up about these 8 metrics. So we'll assume that it's okay. Let's go into what those metrics are. Okay. The first is the OpenTable state of the restaurant industry. Now, not sure if you're aware of what OpenTable is, but it is a mobile app, very, very popular, particularly in a lot of cities. I use it myself in Philadelphia, where you can book restaurant reservations, okay, used by millions of people around the country. Every week, OpenTable publishes their state of the restaurant industry, where they publish data of the reservations that were made through their mobile app, a great indication as to how the economy is going and where it is. So when you look at this data, all the way up here, you can see where COVID was, starting all the way, let's turn this way, right? So all the way back there, you can see pre-COVID, then you can see it drop all the way down, and now you can see that the recovery is on the way. These are some different states that are there. This is through last week. Yes, the restaurant industry is recovering, which is a good news, because people are dining out a little bit more, but we all know that the restaurant capacity is limited in many different places. Some are even shut down, or they're only required to dine outside. Nationally, that's the black line right now. We're still at about 50% of the levels that we saw pre-COVID. So we are kind of ticking up a little bit, not ticking up as fast as I like. That to me is just, I'm keeping an eye on this every week. When this starts spiking a little bit more nationally on average, that will tell me that consumers are getting back to normal business. So that first metric is a very important one that I like to look at. The second metric that I enjoy looking at is the Transportation Security Admin, TSA, travelers going through US airports. Every day, the TSA publishes those numbers. So if you look at this chart, the line that you see behind me, this blue line, that is the level of travelers this time last year. And the red line that you see down below, this line is the number of travelers that we have currently during this year. So if you, and the dotted line, by the way, is just the percentage difference. So if you look at the numbers, we had about 2.1 million, actually more like 2.2 million travels this time this week last year, and right now we're at a level that's a little bit below 900,000. So certainly less than half the number of travelers are going through the US airports. That to me is an indication that although we are trending up a little bit, although last week you can see it took a little bit of a dip down, the more travelers are going on, the better that is for business, conferences, business travel, travel and leisure, vacations, all of that. So it's another metric that I keep an eye on. Not anything that is making me jump for joy that we're in a strong recovery yet. And again, these decisions are, the recovery is going to happen, guys, okay? But the question is, when do we start taking advantage of that recovery? When do we start investing or feel comfortable hiring? These are the kind of numbers that give me that indication. The third metric that I like to track is inventory levels. I look at that as an accountant because I know when inventory levels get low, and assuming that demand starts picking back up again, manufacturers have got to start making more inventory. And when they make more inventory, that employs people, that they're spending money, they're buying products and all of that. This is our inventory levels that we've seen since the beginning of the year. You can see behind me that they dropped precipitously starting in March because a lot of businesses either closed, they sent their workers home, the demand had dropped off, and therefore they weren't making anything and they were just selling their existing inventories. The numbers hit in July and started sloping up just a little bit, but I can tell you right now that we haven't seen September's numbers yet, which is what I'm waiting for to see if there is a continuing trend up. What I'm seeing right now is that we've bottomed out on inventory levels, so that's good. The question is how fast is this trend going to be back up again to what our normals level was that we saw back, before here in February. So it's another chart that I look at every single month. Next, the Institute of Supply Managers Service and Manufacturers Business Conditions Index. Now, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the ISM or not. The Institute of Supply Managers, it's actually it's an association. It's kind of like RDA. It's an association, though, of purchasing managers across the country. There are a couple thousand of them that belong to the association. To be a member of the association, you've got to be like a certified purchasing manager, and I'm pretty sure you need to look like this. Okay, so right, because they're purchasing managers. However, the association puts out an amazing index, 2 of them actually. Every month they survey their members and they say to them, hey, what are you guys buying? Because that's what they do. And what are you buying over the next 30 days, 60 days, and 90 days? And a few other metrics as well to give an indication as to what their activity is. And then what they do is they break it out between the manufacturing and the service businesses that are part of their organization. And this is what it shows. Anything over the line that you see, or that 50 line, that black line in the middle here, my finger is pointing to, that is, anything over that is growth. Anything below it is non-growth, is the opposite of growth, right? So as you can see, at the end of it, we took a big dip during COVID, and then it jumped back up again after COVID. And our growth levels that we're looking at are really comparable to what they were back in 2018 and 2019. So that it indicates to me that manufacturers are back in business, they're reporting growth, purchasing managers are buying, and I'm expecting to see that in the inventory levels I just showed you now. Once I see the numbers for September and October, I expect to see that being reflected because people are restoring their inventory levels back to pre-COVID levels. So that's actually a very encouraging sign. Again, I'm going to keep an eye on that. If we have shutdowns or anything like that, certainly that's going to impact these manufacturing numbers. Also, good news on the service side. Same rule. Anything over 50 is growth. Anything below 50, not growth. So we saw it took a big drop during COVID, and now it's recovering, and we're now up to levels right here that again we saw back in 2018 and 2019 and 2020. So that's also good news. So according to the ISM, their purchasing managers, they're buying. Okay, so America's purchasing managers, they're buying stuff, they're planning on more manufacturing, they're planning on more production. This is to take us through the remainder of the year. So to me, that's a good sign that the recovery is is starting to go. Not seeing it yet in the restaurant visitors yet, or in the travelers yet, but I'm seeing in the production of products, and that's really good news. Okay, so in addition, I like to look at small business confidence. Now, the National Federation of Independent Businesses, they published their monthly Small Business Confidence Index. Their last one they did was just this past Tuesday. And there's 30 million small businesses in this country. So when small businesses who employ more than half of the people in this country, when they're feeling confident, that's a good indication that the economy is doing good. Now, you would think with all that we see and read in the media that small businesses are like, they're in the toilet and they're up, whatever, you can say everybody. It's not the case. Now, certainly there are plenty of business industries that have definitely been suffering. The restaurateurs, retailers. I don't even know how you run a fitness business during COVID or travel. But no doubt that there are some industries that have been hurt. But when you look at the confidence levels from the NFIB, not so bad. Again, similar to what happened last year, they fell during COVID, but then they increased all the way up, and they are right now at levels that we saw since President Trump was elected. I mean, not to an all-time high, but not so bad. So there are a lot of businesses out there, and I think you guys know that as well. There are people that are out there, distributors and manufacturers, that are still at work, still selling to their clients, still selling to their customers, still doing their thing. They've had to adjust. For many, the year may have been like that great a year, but for others, they've actually had a decent year. So confidence is not so bad. If I saw this really tanking or trending down, I would be very, very concerned. That's not the case. It's pretty much at these levels. Again, we haven't seen what the confidence levels will be now that the election is behind us. So it'll be interesting to see that index next month. But it's just something that I look at every single month. Just a couple more. Builder confidence. Because, hey, we all know this, right? However the construction industry is doing has an indirect effect on all industries, including this one. So if builders are doing good for both new homes, for existing homes, that's a very, very good sign for the U.S. economy. I like the National Association of Home Builders. They do their builder confidence survey every single month. It is at an all-time high. Again, big drop in concern during COVID, and then wow, because the construction businesses got back to business, right? And many of them were allowed to continue on with the work they were doing. It's outside, it's fine. So, so confidence is good. We also saw home sales are up as well, both existing. A lot of people are looking for new homes as well, new home building. There was a housing shortage. Construction industry is doing pretty good. And again, that has a a knock-on effect to a lot of businesses around the country. So that's an encouraging one. And again, I look at this every month to make sure those numbers stay either growing or at a good, consistent level. The Chemical Activity Barometer is published once a month by the American Chemistry Council, and they have been doing this since 1948. The American Chemistry Council is the same group of people that are like, it's sort of like the Institute of Supply Managers, although I'm told the people that belong to the American Chemistry Council are a little bit better looking than the people at the Institute of Supply Managers, but that's completely up to your judgment. They get asked every single month not only what you're buying, but what you're selling, what your backlog is, what your profitability is, what your employment levels are, and they put it all together into an economic barometer of the industry. And make no mistake, chemicals are in everything, right? Where we look around, everything that we buy, we sit on, we eat, we consume, all has chemicals in it. So if the chemical industry is doing well, that's a good sign for the U.S. economy. The chemical industry, same story we heard before, took the big dip during COVID, and then is back on its way up again. Levels are about where we were in 2015, 2016. So again, that's encouraging as well. And finally, my last metric to share with you is something called the Baltic Dry Index. Now, I don't know if you know what the Baltic Dry Index is, but let me explain to you. It is an index of the freight prices for shipments going through the Baltic Sea. Now, just full disclosure, if somebody were to ask me to point out the Baltic Sea on a map, I would not be able to do that. For all I know, people are canoeing through the Baltic Sea right now. But as it turns out, it happens to be the world's most traversed lane for international shipping. So when freight prices are going up in the Baltic Sea, that means that there's more demand for shipping. And therefore, that's a good sign for the global economy. This is the Baltic Dry Index. Now you see it going up and down, but this is monthly. The good news is it was certainly low back in April and May during the COVID, but then you could see it recover during the summer. It's dipped down a little bit lower, but certainly not down to COVID levels. And this index does dip back and forth depending on how shipment trends go. And I'll tell you, a big reason why this shipment happened back in September, October is a lot of Christmas shipments were being made from China and the Far East over to the US. That's a good sign. The fact that the freight levels dropped a little bit, then the price of freight just basically means that the holiday season shipments are behind us, but they're still not a bad level right now. So again, I look at this about every week just to see how they're progressing. So far, global shipping, which means the global economy, sounds pretty good. Those are my 8 metrics, just so you know, just to recap. I like to look at restaurant, how many people are eating out every week. I like to look at the people that are going through the airports right now, what our companies' inventory levels are, what purchasing managers' expectations are buying, what confidence is of small businesses, what confidence there is in the construction industry, how the chemical industry is doing, and finally, just an overall gauge on how worldwide shipping is going along. You don't really hear about these metrics very much, but those are the metrics that to me are really driving what the economy is. And that tells me, as I see the trends going up, helps me make decisions as to where I'm going to invest, who I'm going to hire, when I'm going to spend or not spend. And I think they're way more relevant than just saying, oh, GDP went up last quarter, or the unemployment rate fell this month. Way, way more relevant. So my recommendation is that if you don't like these metrics, find some other metrics on your own. I'll give you some other suggestions in a minute. Now, before I leave the metrics part, let me just also address one other issue, and that has to do with inflation. Okay, a lot of people think that we could be heading into inflationary times. Some people are actually concerned we could be looking at deflationary times. That means that if the economy doesn't grow at all, then prices don't go up and wages don't go up, and that causes deflation. I believe that we are looking at higher inflation over the next few years. And let me give you some of the reasons why I believe that. Number one is we have just evidence worldwide of frayed supply chains because of COVID, which are going to take a while to adjust. That impacts prices. We have commodity shortages worldwide, also brought about by these supply chain issues. And we're seeing in certain cases, certain commodities are still hard to find. I think are going to continue to be for at least the foreseeable future. However, the biggest impact on inflation that's going on right now has to do with bank deposits and the money supply. This is the money supply in this country that we have seen. Now, if you look all the way back, this starts all the way at the end of 2019 that you can see here, right? Where you can see the money supply was about $15 trillion. And you can see that it goes all the way up to the most recent numbers of about $19 trillion. Our money supply has increased by about $4 trillion in just the past year, which is an unprecedented increase in the money supply. And why has it increased so much? It's because of the Federal Reserve providing liquidity to its banks. Now, say what you want about economists or the Treasury or the Federal Reserve, but a lot of lessons have been learned over the past, 150 years in this country. The biggest lesson was from the Great Depression back in 1929 and the 1930s. When that depression hit, there was liquidity issues. And unfortunately, the government did not step up to provide liquidity to its banking system, which was the biggest reason, the pivotal reason why so many banks failed as a result of that depression and why the depression lasted for as many years as it did. Well, lessons were learned. That was learned and implemented in 2009. And to give credit to our government officials, when COVID hit and the what hit the fan, the Federal Secretary Jerome Powell as well as Secretary Mnuchin, they both leapt to attention and they provided lots of liquidity that you're seeing here to the banks, the banking system, so that no banks would fail for lack of liquidity. And the banks had the ability to lend money out to their customers as well, to finance them if they needed help, and provide that kind of assistance. And that's been a big, big help to keep the economy going during this really unprecedented recession. Now, the problem is that the money is all still out there. It's not like they can just take it back. So if the economy continues to heat up and the banks themselves are putting more money into the system, loaning more money out to the system, financing the growth of a lot of companies, and the Fed can't control that, that means that we have got more currency floating around, which devalues the currency. That creates inflation. Now, you would think the Fed can raise interest rates, because if you raise interest rates, that inhibits the banks from putting the money out because people don't want to pay the higher rates. Well, Jerome Powell has said that for the foreseeable future, and it could be another year or two, the Fed right now, which has interest rates at near zero, they're not going to make any moves to increase interest rates. In other words, they're just going to kind of let it happen. So if that happens, and right now inflation is below 2%, I think we could be seeing inflation run not to the 1980s levels. We're not going to see double-digit inflation, but I don't think it is out of the question that we'll see inflation rise up anywhere from 3 to 5% over the next couple of years because of the situation that we're in. If you believe what I believe, if you feel that way, and I suggest that you read other people's opinions on this, then here are just a few strategies that you might want to consider. Now, these strategies are from, again, other smart business owners and leaders that I know that are, that are thinking of the same thing. So in an inflationary environment or a potential inflationary environment, you want to lock in on supply agreements. So whatever you're buying right now, if you can talk to your vendors or suppliers, maybe lock it in for 2, 3, or 4 years. You have to make purchasing commitments, but that way you can keep prices stable, and that will help particularly in an inflationary environment. Number 2, lock in employment agreements. If you have key employees, senior managers or executives, they're not inexpensive. If you can lock in agreements with them on both their compensation and their benefits, then that also will help you as far as managing your costs in your business. You want to lock in long-term interest rates. Right now, interest rates are relatively low from a historical basis. At some point, the Fed will have to start increasing interest rates to control inflation. And when that happens, that's going to have an impact on your business. If you've got variable rate loans, short-term loans, lines of credit that you can convert into more of a fixed rate, long-term secured loan, that's something that you should definitely be considering. And finally, you might want to be considering committing to a long-term lease agreement. Now, I don't buy into the whole thing about how because of work from home, all these offices are going to shut down, and everybody's just going to work from home. That's just not going to happen. People have to come to work. So, I totally believe that work from home now is legitimized as a great benefit to provide to your employees and allow them to go back and forth to the office, maybe spend a couple of days a week at home and the rest of the time in the office. But I think office space is still going to very much well be needed past COVID, but a lot of landlords are freaking out right now. So it's a really good time to negotiate more space and longer term lease agreements with your landlord right now. And that can lock down prices as well for the next few years. Also, again, like if you have some spare cash and you want to invest it, the typical investments that you make in an inflationary environment or in property always does well, commodities and natural resources. These are just some of the strategies that you might want to consider if you, like me, believe that inflation is going to be heading up. So we've talked about inflation strategy. We talked about the metrics that I like to use to run my business. You've got to have some metrics to run your business as well. It's important that you keep your eye on the ball and don't rely just on the mainstream media type covered metrics, the GDPs, and just the retail sales and the unemployment rate. Have a few good metrics. Now, some people like, unique metrics. I mean, I know one person who they track recreational vehicle sales, because recreational vehicle sales gives you the indication as to whether or not how the economy is doing. And, it's a luxury item. So people are buying RVs when the economy is good. They're not buying RVs when the economy isn't good. I have one very sick friend who is an economist. He tracks pet thefts in New York City. I mean, his theory is that when more dogs are being stolen or cats and then sold on the black market, that's an indication that people are really in trouble and they're having a bad time when the economy's not doing good. I know it's a very, very sad individual, a single guy, just never been married. He's just, he goes home every night and just, reads the paper, I guess, or whatever. It's just sad. So I'm not saying you should follow that as a metric, but it is something to consider. I know people that have been following for years what's called the lipstick index. I don't know if you've ever heard of the lipstick index, but the lipstick index works like this. In recessionary times, women tend to spend less on luxury items, so they'll spend less on cosmetics or perfume, which are more expensive, but they'll buy more lipstick because lipstick is relatively inexpensive and it makes you feel and look good. So it was kind of a gauge. A lot of economists that I knew said, oh, they look at lipstick sales every month, and that kind of gives an indication as to how the economy is going. Except for this recession, because this recession is a little unique. Why? Because we've all been locked down at home during this entire recession. So lipstick is not really needed at all. I mean, my wife has been wearing the same pair of sweatpants since March, right? I mean, she's not buying any lipstick. So even though we've had this recession, lipstick sales have also been in the tank. I think, in a normal recession, it's probably a good indicator that you can follow for fun. But, for this one, not as relevant. My favorite kind of off the wall indicator that is tracked by, this is true, Alan Greenspan, the former head of the Federal Reserve. Every month, Alan Greenspan, he gets a report from the men's underwear industry, and he tracks monthly men's underwear sales as a gauge as to how the economy is going, and I am not kidding. And you want to know why? Let me tell you why. Because Mr. Greenspan may look like a nerdy guy, because he is a nerdy guy, but you know what? He's still a guy, and any guy will tell you that when things are going good, we're buying more underwear. When things aren't going so good, we tend to wear them for an extra day or two, okay? Don't, right? Okay. So Greenspan knows that. That's why he tracks underwear sales. You need to have a good metric that you follow. You also need to follow some good economists. I mean, listen, you're running a business. You don't have time for all, you're not an economist yourself. You're going to sit there and calculate Baltic Dry Index or, freight tonnage through the, LA ports. You need people that will give you that information. So these are the people that I like to follow, right? I mean, Mark Perry is fantastic. He writes for the American Enterprise Institute, leans a little bit to the right. Bill McBride writes a great blog called Calculated Risk Blog, leans a little bit to the left. So, you got to get people on both sides. What a concept. You want to hear the ideas and thoughts of people on both sides of the issue, right? Just, wow, who knew? So these people, I get, just a wide variety, and I get their newsletters like every day, email updates, and I get updated on all these kinds of metrics. And in fact, if you notice the metrics that I showed you earlier, my 8 metrics, they all come from like Calculated Risk Blog and Advisor Perspectives. So just so you know, that's where I go to get my information. One final place I do like to go because I find it so enjoyable is Shorpy.com. Let me explain to you why Shorpy.com is so good. Shorpy.com is not an economist site. It has nothing to do with financial stuff. It is a site that digitizes old photos. And every day I get an email from Shorpy with 2 or 3 old photos that have been digitized. You know what it does? They give me perspective on the world, right? So when things are bad, when people complain about like the state of my office, I can say to them, look, you could be working in this office, dude. Okay, I mean, like, we got air conditioning, I got the internet, we got a Keurig machine, life is good, you're all fine, it's all right, it's fine. It just kind of puts things into. When I get complaints from my son's principal because they got detentions, they were acting out, I realized boys have always been acting up for any number of years. That hasn't changed at all. It's not going to change in the future. So just relax. Your boys will be fine. These guys are probably all stockbrokers and accountants for all I know, right? Same thing with girls, by the way. If you guys have daughters, the girls have always been acting up, okay? So let's put things into perspective. Not only that, people have been making pictures of cats for the internet, right? Because you'd think people are bad now on the internet. They were dressing up cats even like 100 years ago. And now is this guy, it reminds me, Shorpy, of what the perfect employee could be. Why is this guy not working for me? That also just kind of keeps in mind of the kind of employees that I aspire to hire. And finally, I don't know, it's just a kid with he's smoking a cigarette and there's a chicken next to him. If you have any idea what this is, you can email me separately and let me know. Okay. All right. True or false? Economists are in agreement that there will be a V-shaped recovery after COVID. True? False? Actually, it's false. And do you know why it's false? This is why it's false. Economists don't know. They don't know. They're making guesses. They're trying their best. They're good people. They're trying to give the best advice they can, but they really don't know. So you want to have your own metrics that you follow, not some of the big mainstream ones. Hopefully you'll like some of the ones that I shared with you, but you want to have some because you've got to know, you've got to make the right decisions for your business. True or false? TSA traveler data is one indicator to measure economic recovery. Absolutely true. It's one of the ones that I love. I look at it every week and they track it every single day, and it should give you a good indication as to where the economy is going. True or false? Locking in long-term contracts is one good way to hedge against potential inflation. Also true. And true or false? Cutting tennis balls in half allows you to save space. Also true. This is what I mean. I mean, look at all the tennis balls that these guys are fitting in here compared to normal. So it makes complete sense. True or false? There was a lifeguard in SpongeBob whose job is to save fish from drowning. That is also true. And true or false? 1 in 100 Europeans are conceived in an IKEA bed. That's false. It's actually 1 in 10 Europeans are conceived in an IKEA bed. That's according to data from IKEA. Do not even ask me how they got that data. Let's see what we've learned. Restaurant reservations, TSA traffic, the chemical activity barometer. These are all among the great metrics that you should be following. These are little known, but very, very important for you to know so that you can make some hiring, investment, and spending decisions. Mark Perry, Bill McBride, these guys are among a few great economist sites to subscribe to and visit. And if inflation rises, consider longer-term commitments on your property, on your warehouse space, on your interest rates, all those kind of things you want to lock down if you think like me that we're in an inflationary environment. All right, let's go to our next topic, the COVID election. So we have just gotten that by us. We had results from last week. I am going, listen, I don't want to, even though I'm going to talk about the election, I want to be just clear right now. Right now, the prevailing assumption is that President-elect Biden will be our president come January. So that is the assumption that I'm going to be going on right now. I realize there are some people contesting that, but it looks that is what's going to happen. So all eyes will be in Georgia come January 5th. Now, Congress takes office during January. New president gets inaugurated on January 20th. On January 5th, there will be a runoff election between two senators. Right now, the Republicans are ahead in controlling the Senate. They picked up 20 seats in the House, the Republicans, so the margin of error is much lower, but the Democrats still control the House. It's their least margin of control in the past 2 decades, but they still control it. The Republicans right now are, they do control the Senate, but that depends on what happens in Georgia. So there are 2 Senate runoffs in that state on January the 5th. If the GOP wins one or both seats, they will control the Senate, either by a 51-49 or a 52-48 margin. And that means whatever the Biden administration wants to get done, they're going to have to go through Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. And where that has a big impact is really on a couple fronts. Number one is that all committee assignments would still be Republicans would be running the committees. Any significant cabinet appointments like Treasury Secretary, Labor Secretary would have to be approved by a Republican-controlled Senate. So that will make it a lot tougher for President Biden to appoint somebody that's maybe too far over to the left. And finally, any major legislation would have to get through a Republican-controlled Senate, and that will also take a lot of effort. So I know that President-elect Biden wants to change taxes, change health care. I'm going to talk about all this in a minute. But again, if you have a Republican-controlled Senate, it's going to really sort of derail his efforts to do anything significant through legislation. However, if the Democrats win both seats, then there will be a 50-50 split in the Senate, with Vice President-elect, Vice President Kamala Harris, having the deciding vote. It also means that McConnell and Chuck Schumer, right now the minority leader, would have to divide up responsibilities. This actually happened before in the 2000 elections between Biden and Bush. Sorry, not Biden and Bush, Bush and Gore. So then we had a 50-50 split, and for a period of time, the control of the Senate was split between. They had to come to an agreement as to who led which committees and what. But in the end, it would be the Democrats that would have the deciding vote. I can assure you that even with the Republicans having a 1 or 2 vote majority, or even with the Democrats having a 50-50 split with the vice president making a decision, the very nature of the U.S. Senator is that it is a legislative body that has been designed to sort of step above the fray of the mob that's in the House, which is why senators get elected for 6 years. So there's only a third of the Senate that will come up for re-election, and that will only happen 2 years from now, which means that a lot of senators make decisions on bigger national interests rather than just going along the party lines. And a lot of moderate senators, that's why it comes down to some of them, are not necessarily swayed by voting directly with what their party wants them to vote. They can do that because they have longer terms and they are part of the Senate, and that's what the Senate's all about. I guess my message is that even if the Republicans have control of the Senate, or even if there's a 50-50 split, it's such a tiny margin of error that you don't know what's going to happen, because with that margin of error, nobody really controls anything. So it's kind of up in the air right now as to what a President Biden would be able to accomplish. I will tell you one thing that will be accomplished, and that'll be a stimulus. As we are sitting here right now, we don't have a stimulus deal in place, but I am telling you, and you can mark my words on this, we will have a stimulus deal by the end of the year. There is bipartisan support on most of the parts of the stimulus deal. I know President-elect Biden wants to get it done. I know President Trump wanted to get it done before the election occurs. I mean, we all know that this is needed, particularly if there's more shutdowns coming. I mean, where we stand right now is the Democrats have supported a bill of $2.2 trillion. The GOP has supported a bill for $1.6 trillion. The big difference is for state and local funding. The Democrats want to provide more state and local funding, whereas the Republicans are complaining about doing that. But really, even President Trump before the election said he would go up as high as 1.8 trillion. So guys, what's a few $100 billion among friends, right? I mean, come on, right? I mean, we're almost there. So the gap is narrowing about the size of the bill to a place where it is definitely a negotiating range. Now, both parties support stimulus checks, not only to adults, but also to kids as well. And knowing my kids, that's an enormous mistake because they're just going to blow it on something stupid. But that's right now, that's a matter that parents will have to deal with. In the meantime, the parties do the stimulus checks also in agreement on that. Unemployment. So, we know that federal weekly unemployment payment was $600 a week during COVID under the CARES Act. That ended in July. Right now, the Democrats want to continue that $600 a week through January. The Republicans want to continue $400 through January. Somewhat contentious issue among a lot of business owners because the $600 a week would demotivate some people to come back to work. Right now, as we're sitting here in November, a new stimulus bill might even extend these stimulus payments or these unemployment payments even longer. But you can tell that their difference is not that big, and certainly something they can come to agreement on. Now, the Families First Continuation Act. This is the program where, as an employer, you're required to pay your employees up to 2/3 of their salary for 12 weeks if they can't come to work because of COVID. Not just them, but if their family members are affected. And not just affected, but I mean things like if their kids are learning virtually and they have to stay home with them, then they're allowed to do that, and you've got to pay them 2/3 of their compensation. You can get a tax credit for that, by the way, but that is what's required in the bill. Democrats want to continue that through February. The Republicans right now are sort of mum on the issue, but I do believe that it's definitely something where there will be agreement on. Business liabilities is a bigger issue. Now, right now, I just want to make sure we're clear here. If any of you guys have any of your employees or customers, say that they got COVID by working in your business and they sue you, your insurance companies are not going to cover that. Okay. Why? Because the insurance companies are a lot smarter than the rest of us. They learn their lessons from the past. And if you look at your insurance policy, there is no coverage for any pandemic related issues. You're not going to get coverage from your insurance company. However, the government wanted to step in. Now, Mitch McConnell, this is a big issue with him. He wants to provide protections for businesses that might be affected this way. And so therefore, he wants to, for at least 5 years. The Democrats disagree. The Democrats' position, and this is Nancy Pelosi's position, is that if we're running healthy and safe businesses, we shouldn't have to worry about business liabilities. Okay, so that is an issue that is still up for compromise, and they're going to have to find some kind of way around that. There is absolute bipartisan compromise on specific industry relief. There are hundreds of billions of dollars set aside for travel, restaurants, retailers. So there's full-blown compromise on that. And there is absolute compromise on extending another round of the Paycheck Protection Program. Could be as much as $300 billion again. And then there's a lot of money left over from the last round. But just be aware, this round would be slightly different. It's not where anybody can come up and just like sign a form and get money again. And I know there's been reports of some fraud under that program as well, which, wow, big surprise, right? That's not going to happen this time. You have to specifically show that your business has been impacted by COVID if you want another Paycheck Protection Program loan. Like your revenues fell anywhere from 35 to 50%. That's the indication that they're using right now. So you can get that loan, but you're going to have to show that you were impacted. Big changes potentially for forgiveness. Now, the Treasury Department just released new forgiveness guidelines for our existing loans just a couple weeks ago, and those forgiveness guidelines are making it easier. But in this new bill, it could be even easier than that. In this new bill, it might be automatic forgiveness for anybody under $75,000 and much, much less requirements if you've got a loan up to $2 million. So we're telling our clients right now, given where I think these stimulus talks are going, if they can hold off on applying for forgiveness, unless it's just really, just black and white, fine. But in this case, hold off because forgiveness might be a lot easier with a new stimulus bill that comes out. And I think it will come out by the end of the year. So there's where we are. All right, let's talk about a few things you can expect from a Biden administration. Number one, and by the way, I would say that this is also something you can expect even if President Trump winds up having a second term, is infrastructure, because both parties are in agreement on spending on infrastructure. There will be an infrastructure bill in 2021. Right now, the House, which is democratically controlled, they passed an infrastructure bill back in July, authorizing $1.5 trillion of infrastructure subsidies and payments, leaning more towards the Green Deal that they did last year, which is with emissions, carbon emissions, more environmentally friendly, more energy efficient buildings, as well as our infrastructure like transportation systems, the energy grid, and all that. So the Republicans themselves, President Trump submitted a $1.7 trillion infrastructure bill. He's done this twice. Hasn't made it through Congress. Very similar to the Democrats, except not as green. Okay, but there's going to certainly be between $1 and $2 trillion spent on infrastructure, and that's going to happen next year. So I'm telling you guys, you're in a great industry for this, and if you're looking to market and sell and get into more projects that might be more related to the infrastructure funding, it is definitely something that you should be looking into doing. It could be a great opportunity for you in 2021, 2022, 2023 as the money starts to be spent. We're looking ahead 2, 3, 4 years. Okay, healthcare. Now, President Biden wants to make a lot of changes to healthcare. He wants to restore the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, back to its full glory as it is. And recent news from the Supreme Court heard testimony just this week challenging the Affordable Care Act, which looks unlikely that they're going to rule to overturn it in any way. President Biden wants to bring back the individual mandate, which was kind of put on hold. So we would all have to prove that we have health insurance or pay a penalty. He wants to expand Medicare payments. He wants to reverse President Trump's executive orders for association health plans. He wants to reverse President Trump's executive orders for low-cost skinny plans as well. So if you're thinking or you have those, I'll get to that in a minute. He wants to have no public option, but he does want to support and provide healthcare options for certain immigrants, particularly the Dreamers. And he wants to restrict drug pricing as well, put those restrictions on drug companies. Now, he's got a big barrier, and that's he needs certain tax increases to fund a lot of the stuff that he wants to do. And getting through these changes and then getting through these tax increases, I mean, he can make a lot of these changes just by executive order or reversing President Trump's executive orders, but getting funding for a lot of these changes is going to be a tall task if he doesn't control the Senate. And again, even if the Democrats even it up in the Senate and they win both races in Georgia, it's still a big mountain to climb to really get approval. Remember, the Senate, there's filibuster rules. You got to get 60 votes to pass bills like this or get past the filibuster. So these are, it makes it much difficult to get something as sweeping as a new tax bill to fund Obamacare through. And I'm not expecting him to have much success, at least during the first 2 years of his term. Now, when we're talking about healthcare, because we are, let me just share with you a couple strategies that you should keep in mind for healthcare as we head into next year. This is just what a lot of my clients, a lot of my readers are doing to control their healthcare costs. Okay, everybody has health savings accounts. Not only is there no legislation to do anything to reverse them, but but President Biden and many people in Congress support expanding the use of health savings accounts where even individuals can have it in addition to their jobs. An HSA, if your company doesn't have one, you got to have one. You got to talk to your benefits person and get it set up. They're easy and they're inexpensive. They got to be coupled with a high deductible healthcare plan. But people can put away thousands every year pre-tax. You, the employer, can contribute to the plan as well pre-tax, which means they don't get taxed on it. And then they can pull out the money and they can use it for other healthcare expenses, even glasses or dental or certain drugs, things like that. So it's a great plan. And if employees love it, because if they don't use it, it carries over to the next year. They can invest the money. It's like a 401k plan. And if they do leave your company, they can take the money, they can take the dollars with them as well. So it's not like they lose it at the end of the year. So they're very popular plans. You've got to make sure that you've got an HSA in your company. Hybrid plans are also extremely popular as well. What a hybrid plan is it combines self-insurance and then also group insurance. So if you've got a hybrid plan, you can tell your employees, hey, listen, for the first, I don't know, $500 in expenses, bring me your check, your invoice or your receipt, and we'll reimburse you for it. Everything after $500, boom, our group plan will then kick in at that point. So really, you're paying self-insurance at the lowest level, and then the group plan kicks in. Why are these popular? Because if you just have a typical group plan and you're paying a premium for everybody in your company, you're probably overpaying because you're paying premiums for people that probably aren't using their health insurance. You probably have younger employees or healthy employees. They never go to the doctor. They don't have a hospital stay, and here you are paying the premiums for them. Right? So a hybrid plan, you don't pay for them unless they actually use it up to the first $500, and then the group plan premiums are a lot less expensive because you're taking the risk at the lower level. So hybrid plans are quite popular and something that you should talk to your benefits person about doing. I'm just telling you, it's a lot of my clients, a lot of business owners are doing hybrid plans this year. Association health plans, like I mentioned before, a lot of them are wrapped up in the courts. I think President Biden is going to reverse them. So I'd be holding off on doing anything with association health plans to see how that shakes out. However, healthcare reimbursement accounts, which again, not really that allowed under Obamacare, but President Trump has been allowing them. They are potentially can be reversed by executive order from President Biden. But you know what? They turned out to be quite popular. And HRAs where people can put money away pre-tax and then take that and buy their health insurance somewhere else. So it is, they become very popular. And so because of that, President Biden might pause before reversing them. So you can probably still have that plan as long as it complements your existing healthcare plans. Just be aware that they might be reversed over the next couple of years, and then those plans will just go away. And finally, look for health insurance that invest in certain technologies. The health insurance with the lower rates long-term are ones that do a lot of stuff. They encourage telemedicine from doctors, and then they also invest in technology like HealthJoy. HealthJoy is like an online platform and integrates with a bunch of health insurance. And then what people do with it is that they invest in, they use it if they go to like lower cost healthcare centers, urgent care centers, whatever. They get encouraged to do that under the plan through HealthJoy, and then you can get rewards and credits for doing that. So the employees, they like that. It's very popular for them to do. So that's just some healthcare strategies, what people are doing this year with their healthcare plans. Taxes. Now, President Biden wants to do a bunch of things with taxes. We've all probably heard this. He wants to raise the individual rates, raise the corporate rates, raise capital gains rates, change the way we value assets if we sell our businesses, tax Social Security or earnings subject to Social Security tax over a certain level, reduce the small business pass-through deduction, all these different things he supports and wants to do. However, again, he's going to have a real difficult time getting that through. Not only a House of Representatives that, again, the margin is much more narrow among Democrats, but a Senate, which is pretty easily split. I'm not expecting to see any significant tax reform changes made over the next 2 years. These are all legislative things that all need to happen. However, as a CPA, let me share with you guys just a few tax moves that you can make this year as well, just to make sure you're saving. Move number one, Paycheck Protection Program. If you got a PPP loan and you did apply for forgiveness this year, be very, very careful. And the reason why is because you could be subject to a much bigger tax liability because of it. Why is that? Because here's why. If you get your loan forgiven, the forgiveness is not taxable. You have to worry about that. But whatever expenses you used for forgiveness, they are not deductible, which means you can't deduct them on your tax return. So let's assume you got a PPP loan, completely legit, totally justified, back in April or May when you're really concerned where things are going to go. And let's assume that you did a great job, the business ran well, and this year is over, and you wound up making about as much money this year as you did, say, last year, okay? Well, last year you paid in taxes. This year you're estimating your taxes based on last year's taxes, but this year you're not able to deduct as many expenses as last year because you used them for forgiveness on the loan, which means your income is going to be higher this year. So if you're not paying in enough estimated taxes, you could be walloped with a big tax bill at the end of the year. So pay attention to that and talk to your accountant. Number two, the Section 179 tax deduction. It's $1 million. So you can buy assets, buy technology, buy software, buy hardware, buy furniture, buy a forklift for your place, buy new shelving, buy stuff for your warehouse. You can immediately deduct $1 million. And by the way, you don't even have to pay for it. You can get it financed if you've got that available. As long as you put it into service by the end of the year, boom, you can take the full deduction. So talk to your accountant about the Section 179 deduction. Also, because of COVID, there are some interesting tax benefits you should be aware of. If your year is not going well and you're going to have a loss, well, guess what? You can now carry back that loss. You weren't allowed to before and get an immediate refund. So if you are looking at a loss this year, push your accountant to get your tax return done, get it filed, carry the loss back to a prior year, and get a refund check from whatever taxes you paid in a prior year sooner, now. So that way it will help you with your cash flow. So ask your accountant about NOL, net operating loss carrybacks. Same thing, if you are helping your employees out because of COVID, be aware of Section 139. If you're just encourage people not to take money out of their 401ks, please. I mean, that's their retirement savings. Instead, if you can help them, if you can pay them any additional money just to help them make ends meet, you can take a deduction for that under Section 139. It's for disaster payments. The whole country has been under disaster over the past year, so you're fully eligible to do that. They don't get taxed on it, you get a deduction. And if business has been slower or you've been doing more sort of thinking of the future, don't forget the research and development tax credit as well is available to you. You might have been spending more money on research and development stuff than you might have done in the past, and you want to make your accountant aware of that as well. The work opportunity tax credit will, it's up to $9,600 for hiring somebody who's been long-term unemployed. So if you're looking for those great employees, and there are millions of people unemployed now, but that's an opportunity, great opportunity for you to hire somebody and get a tax credit for doing just that. Write off your receivables and your inventory, clean up your balance sheet because you can't get a tax deduction until you write it off. And finally, your kids probably aren't as lazy as you think. Remember that the standard deduction is $12,000. So if you hire your kid this right now, pay them up to $12,000, you can deduct that entire $12,000 that you pay them. They don't get taxed on the $12,000 because of the standard deduction. So just be aware there's some tax actions that you want to be take advantage of as well. Finally, there's labor under a Biden administration. Now here is where you can be pretty significantly impacted because a lot of the labor stuff doesn't necessarily need congressional action. It really depends on who President Biden appoints as a labor secretary. Now, he wants to increase the national minimum wage to $15 an hour. That's probably not going to happen, not without congressional support. However, he can increase overtime wages. He can mandate some Family and Medical Leave Act changes as well through the Department of Labor. He can change the independent contracting rules with help from his Treasury Secretary and the Department of Labor. Certainly strengthen labor laws under the Department of Labor. He can eliminate using non-compete agreements in labor agreements as well. And also he can affect certain changes to 401k plans, which he might need congressional approval to do that as well. But those changes would, instead of doing those pre-tax payments and taking a deduction, you get a credit for anything that you make to your 401k plans. So there's a lot of different things, a lot of regulations that might impact businesses when it comes to labor. So true or false? Both parties agree on business liability limitations. It's false, right? The Democrats, no coverage for business liability in a stimulus plan. The Republicans want to cover us if there's any business liabilities for the next 5 years. Certainly a point of contention among the two, and they're going to have to come to some compromise for when the stimulus bill happens, and it will happen by the end of the year. True or false? Democrats and Biden support more infrastructure spending. Absolutely true. A $1.5 trillion infrastructure bill has already passed the House that Biden supports. So we're looking at more infrastructure spending in 2021, and that'll go on for 2022 and 2023. And true or false, the best way to stop your teenage daughter from taking inappropriate selfies is just to take away her iPhone? Turns out that is false, and I'll tell you the reason why. It all has to do with a guy named James Worthington. He lives in Leeds, England, and he has a 16-year-old daughter who was taking inappropriate selfies with her iPhone and posting onto her Facebook page. So what he decided to do is every time she took an inappropriate selfie of herself, he would take an inappropriate selfie of himself, post it on his Facebook page, and share it with her on her Facebook page. He did this for a period of about 6 days. 6 days. She stopped. They called a truce. He didn't have to take away the iPhone. All is fine between father and daughter. So thank you, dads. You can say you're welcome. This is what you do if your daughter is taking inappropriate selfies and posting them online. And finally, true or false, this woman is still waiting for all votes to be counted. Absolutely true. Shane, it ain't over until it's over. All right, so here's what we've learned. You want to have some good metrics to follow. You want to have some good economists to follow. If inflation rises, you want to take some actions like locking in long-term agreements and prices. A Biden presidency will bring more regulations, work-based protection, and higher taxes, but probably less chaos than under a Trump administration. These are things that we're going to have to balance as the years go on. All right. In the last 25 minutes that I have, let me share with you guys just some opportunities and think about where you can make some money over the next few years. We head into 2021 because there are a lot of things that are going on right now in the economy, politics as well, that impact our business and impact our industry that I think have a big, opportunities for you as well. So the first has to do with funding. Now, I mean, we all know we have the economic injury disaster loans and the Paycheck Protection Program and all those things that happened because of COVID, okay? So a couple things to bear in mind. I already spoke about the forgiveness thing, all right? Hold off on forgiveness for just, another month or so, right? Don't apply for it unless, again, it's just cut and dry. This is a really good forgiveness calculator that I have up here, so you can check that out. But I would talk to your accountant. The bankers haven't even gotten their act together, and a new stimulus program is going to probably change all the rules anyways. Just hold off on forgiveness for the time being. The Main Street Lending Program is something that you should really take a hard look at. It has been incredibly unpopular among businesses, and I think there might be a little misconception about it. The Main Street Lending Program was started by the Federal Reserve, and it's offered through all their member banks, which is many, many banks around the country. The minimum loan is $100,000, and I get that. Interest rates are marketable rates. Maturity is about 4 or 5 years. You don't even have to start paying it back until your 3rd year. So the first 2 years, you don't have to even pay back any principal. So we're just talking about paying a little bit of interest. And here's the thing with these Main Street Lending Program loans that many people don't know. You can pay it back without any penalty. So think about that for just a minute. If you've got the ability to go to your bank and get a $100,000 loan or a $200,000 loan, and you take that money and you stick it into a bank account or a money market account, and hopefully you'd never have to use it. But we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen over the next few months. We don't know if there's going to be other lockdowns, shutdowns, or big issues that will impact our business. Hopefully you'll be fine. And if you're fine, it turns out it's March, it's April, we're shooting ourselves up with this vaccine, the economy is back to normal, everybody is cheering and traveling and going to Disney. Super. Take that 100 grand, pay it back, you don't pay any penalties at all. But the smartest businesses that I've met, they know that cash is the most important thing right now. And here's your opportunity to have some cash in the bank without having to go through a lot of panic if what hits the fan. So I would have you reconsider those Main Street Lending Program loans. Also, take a look at the SBA Section 7A loans. If you've got less than 500 employees, you talk to any Small Business Administration member bank, and you can get a loan. Again, market interest rates, but it's all covered by the government, so the banks are encouraged to get those loans out to people that otherwise might not have been able to afford them. Workers' comp is another thing. Workers' comp rates for your employees working from home should be at the lowest level. It's a clerical level. So if you have any people that you are paying higher rates for because they were working in a more riskier environment, but they've been working from home, even if you brought them back to the office, you got to talk to your workers' comp people and try and get money back for the time that they spent working at home, because that was the most risky time. So workers' comp is a source of cash that you can tap into. You want to talk to your workers' comp person to get that help. And finally, the U.S. Chamber just published a great list recently of grants for small businesses that are open to any business in any industry and a real opportunity, and another something that you should consider. Okay, so funding is a really, really big opportunity that is out there. And let me talk about some more. Labor is a big opportunity that is out there. Obviously, we know there's a lot of people that are unemployed, but it's coming back. And remember, it was just earlier this year where our biggest problem was finding good people. Finding people that could breathe, right? Well, now, obviously, there's a lot of good people that are out there. And my smartest clients are taking their excess cash, even borrowing a little bit or taking some funding. They're using it to buy people because they know that it's the people that will make the difference to their business once COVID is behind us and we start recovering again. So they're looking on sites like ZipRecruiter, LinkedIn, which has connected hundreds, like a million, tens of millions of job seekers with their with employers, and of course this industry association as well. These are all good places you can go to find good people. Consider certain hiring tools in the future. They all use artificial intelligence. Maya, the one in the middle here, is one. They all do the same thing, but I'll give you the example of what they do, like Maya, HireVue, ConveyIQ. Maya, for example, because I know a few clients that use it, it's a video interviewing tool. You set up questions and a candidate looks into a camera and answers the questions. And then these software products evaluate the person's face, their eye movements, their mouth movements, the tone of voice that's coming out, what they're saying, the keyword, the words that they're using. it's like these are like 3 of the world's creepiest applications ever, because then they give you a report as to whether or not this person is a good candidate or they're a homicidal maniac, you know? So, but I'm not saying these should be the be all and end all to help you decide on when to hire somebody, but they certainly will help in the process. They're relatively inexpensive to use, and a lot of companies are using them. Using these testing applications will help you bring people on as well. And finally, you got to invest in an HR platform this year to manage your existing employees. What these HR platforms do is quite amazing. Every Paychex, Gusto, Bamboo, there's a bunch of Zenefits, ADP. These platforms all have mobile apps, and your employees have these mobile apps. They integrate with your payroll system, so that if they have a question about payroll, they just look it up on the mobile app. Or if they need to change their contact information, or if they need to put in for paid time off or sick time, they do it all through the mobile app. Right now, you might have somebody that's overburdened with paperwork doing that. This all gets done self-service. These are the employees doing it themselves, and they're super popular among employees. So another thing to consider as well is just what these HR platforms do. Let me share with you some hot benefits in this labor market there, because you want to make sure that your good people are happy and staying involved, and then at the same time you also want to make sure that you're attractive to find other people that are out there. So these are what's really hot going into 2021. Student debt relief is very hot. I mean, as we know, student debt is one of the biggest issues that are out there. We have a whole generation of people that are overburdened by student debt. Tuition.io is a platform that integrates with payroll systems and with loan processing and college payment systems, so that it just makes it real easy to set up, and you can actually help out your employees with student debt payments. Just something to consider. And again, Congress, I think, is going to be considering in the next year or two more provisions to give tax benefits to employers that help out people with student debt. Education deduction. You can deduct $5,250 per employee to help them with any educational costs. Let's see, the college, university, technical schools, skills, doesn't even have to be related to your business. It's just to help them, and you get a deduction, and they do not get taxed for doing that. Dependent care deductions. You can deduct $5,000 to help out an employee with dependent care costs, their children or even their older parents. You can set up a flexible spending plan. It's a use it or lose it plan where money can be put away pre-tax and then used for dependent care spending. Or if you're really feeling jolly, you can set up your own dependent care facility and get a $150,000 tax credit. Dependent care is a big issue among the workforce nowadays, with 2 people working 2 jobs and also having older parents to care for as well. It's a great benefit to provide, and the government provides you with these tax incentives. A few others: unlimited paid time off. Now, do not laugh at me when I say this. What unlimited paid time off is becoming more popular because employers are realizing that, one, a lot of people are requesting it. They think it's like a great thing. But even though they're requesting it, it turns out, I'm just writing about this right now, that more employees take less time off when they have an unlimited paid time off plan as compared to like a use it or lose it policy. Don't ask, it's like a psychological thing. Like if it's use it or lose it, they feel like they have to use it, but if they don't, they lose it. They wind up taking up to 15% less time off. And if you have an unlimited paid time off plan and an employee leaves, 3 court cases have been decided in favor of employers saying they do not have to pay for any unused vacation. How do you even figure out what's unused vacation when you have an unlimited paid time off program? So as it turns out, unlimited PTO could actually save you money as an employer, and something you might want to revisit. Same thing with the Family and Medical Leave Act right now. Because of tax reform, if you give somebody 12 weeks of FMLA leave, if you pay for 50% of it, right now it's unpaid leave, if you pay for 50% of it, you can get a tax credit for doing that. A lot of companies investing in financial health applications, because the better financial situation of your employees are, the better off that you will be as well. Many employers are investing in team building applications like Bonusly and Motivosity. Many employers are investing in rewards applications like Fond, which gives you discounts, and Card Cash. It gives you gift cards. I had a friend of mine who gave me a $100 gift card to the hair cuttery. He gave me a $100 gift card to the hair cuttery, right? So no use to me whatsoever. So I took the gift card, I sold it to Card Cash for 50 bucks, which to me was like money from heaven. And then Card Cash sold it for 75 bucks. You can get discount gift cards for all these major brands and then give them out to your employees as for incentives, or if they win a team building contest. So something that you want to consider. And finally, if you set up a 401k plan this year and you have less than 100 employees, you can get a tax credit. $500 a year for the next 3 years, you get a tax credit. These are all hot benefits that a lot of employers are considering to keep their employees happy, their existing ones, and to recruit new ones as the economy continues to recover. So true or false? There are huge penalties for prepaying a Main Street lending program loan. False, right? No penalties at all. Get the loan, put the money in the bank, for God's sake, right? You might need it. We don't know what's going to happen. If you don't need it, pay it back. No penalty. Pay a few months of interest. It's not going to kill you, but at least you've got that money in reserve. True or false? Small businesses can get a tax credit for starting a 401k plan. Absolutely true. It's 500 bucks a year credit for 3 years if you've got less than 100 employees. True or false? Unlimited paid time off may actually reduce your PTO expenses. Absolutely true. Employees are fine in taking less paid time off when they have an unlimited plan, as well as you don't have to pay out for any unused vacation. And true or false, this person would benefit from a gift card from the hair cuttery. False, as we know. Okay, so we've talked about funding, we've talked about labor disruption, a few more opportunities, and then I'll wrap things up. Working from home, we all know Zoom and Microsoft Teams, all that kind of stuff. Here's what you got to be aware of about working from home. This is what you need to be aware of. Read this headline. This is a malware gang, a ransomware gang. They are making so much money, they are giving money to charity. That's how much money these guys are making. Ransomware has increased by 7-fold in just the past year. These guys are making money hand over foot. $1 billion in ransomware payments made in 2019. That's expected to go up way, way more in 2020. Why? Because we're all working from home and we're all dopes when it comes to security. So yeah, invest in security. Get your IT people out there and make sure your people are using security software, backing up. We know there's employees that are on older computers, or they're sharing their computers with their dopey kids as well, and we're all doing dopey stuff. So, you know, the very most important thing you want to do is make sure your operating systems are the most recent versions, because the ransomware makers, they got millions of bots running right now looking for older operating systems that they can then compromise and then get access to your corporate network. If you're running the most recent versions of Windows, Apple iOS, you know, Android, you're discouraging those ransomware people from even bothering you to do it. It's too much work for them. So make sure that your employees are doing that as well. That's the biggest advice I can give to you about working from home. Mergers and acquisitions is another part. I want you to look at this graph. This shows, this is from BizBuySell, which is an organization that is a place where you can buy businesses and sell businesses and get advice on buying and selling your business. Right now, the confidence of buyers is like basically at the highest it's been in the past 7 years. And the confidence of sellers is at the lowest that it's been in the past 7 years. Why is that? Because you've got a lot of millennials and younger people that have been working from home. Startup applications have been through the roof, and a lot of them are looking to buy into and get into their own businesses and be their own entrepreneurs. They want to buy. Then you've got the whole area of existing business owners. The typical age of the average US small business owner is about 52 years old. And I got news for you. Most of them, many of them are of the boomer generation, and the boomers are exhausted at this point, right? I mean, COVID has pretty much been like the last straw. So as we have an aging population, there's more of a demand of people looking to sell their businesses. We've got low inflation and we've got very low interest rates. We have the potential for potentially higher taxes, either capital gains or step-up bases under a Biden administration. And we've got a very big popularity in employee stock ownership plans growing as well. All of these are contributing to increased activity in the M&A market. It is a great time to buy your business, and it's a great time to sell your business as well because of all these factors that I've just mentioned. So I am looking for the opportunity. Plus, you know, because of this right now, it should be something you might want to consider to do and to get your business in shape to either buy or look to sell or to look for a good business to buy. Markets. There are many good markets that we know, again, like I said, 6 hours ago when I started here, that, retail and restaurants, and, I've been having a tough year. There have been a lot of industries that have been having a great year, just so you know. For example, e-commerce sales are up 44% this year. It's not just Amazon. It's all across all the other platforms. Everybody's just been buying from home. We already saw that home building confidence is at an all-time high, according to the National Association of Home Builders. Warehousing properties, if you're a property owner or looking to buy or even lease out, Amazon is leasing millions of square feet all around the country, as well as Walmart, Macy's, and Target, because they're clamoring for a service that people can buy stuff online and then get them, that same day. So there's big competition for warehousing space that's going on right now. The plastics industry is booming. It's not just the face shields, but it's like every business you go into now has plastic shields in front of them. I was at an event, believe it or not, I was at a conference this week, that's a whole other story. They were serving muffins, right, for breakfast, each in its own little plastic container. The plastics industry is like through the roof right now. So, companies, not industry, doing well. If you want a new pool for your house in a lot of areas in the country, you have to wait up to 2 years. That's the backlog that's going on. People are working, they're at home all the time, and they're putting in pools, right? And finally, and unfortunately, mental health startups are at almost $1.5 billion in investment, significant increase from prior years as well. That's also just another area where a lot of people are seeking help because of COVID. So there have been a lot of market opportunities that you might want to go into or sell into if you think that's something that would impact your business or be an opportunity for you or your business. Just a few other things to mention, I'll wrap things up. Commercial property deals, depending on where you are around the country, there are many that are going on right now, particularly in cities. Distressed equipment sales, look at your local auction sites. I have a lot of clients that are talking to people in their industry, auction sites where a lot of companies just haven't navigated themselves very well or are really struggling with cash flow, and they're looking to sell off some assets, and it's a great time to buy up those assets. Disaster planning, I mean, if you ever need evidence that now is a time for disaster planning, this would be it. I mean, if you're not convinced after what we've been through, so now is the time to really get together with an attorney, with your accountant, with a consultant, and make sure you've got a really good disaster plan in place to see your business through whenever the next pandemic or whatever it is happens to occur. Bankruptcy as a strategy is one other thing. Because of new rules, new laws took effect regarding small businesses filing for bankruptcy under Chapter 11. And it was just coincidental, but they took effect at the beginning of 2020. It makes it much, much easier to do. You don't have to have committees. You don't have to go through all the different processes. Your personal assets wouldn't be part of a bankruptcy proceeding anymore, among other benefits as well. So I have a handful of clients that have looked at this and said, you know what? I realize that the public relations effect isn't great, or the effect of my credit report isn't great, but I can deal with it. I'm going to file for bankruptcy. I'm going to renegotiate my debt with my vendors. I'm going to take a breather, and I'm going to wait till this COVID nonsense is behind us, and I'm going to reemerge in summer 2021 with my business the way it is and get back to business. So because bankruptcy is a lot less expensive and a lot easier to do than ever before, a lot of companies that I know are really considering doing that as a strategy, not as an end game, but as a strategy. Cash is the most important thing that's out there, and this is what I'll finish up on. Want to just make sure that I share with you, just again, as an accountant, as a CPA, just a few pieces of advice. Number one, if you haven't learned this already, I mean, I was getting laughed at years ago saying you need to have 6 months of cash on hand, at least cash availability, 6 months. That's cash and a line of credit. I've saw it when this thing hit the fan. Who knows what else is going to hit the fan in the future? You got to have enough, to survive in your business for at least 6 months. And obviously with this COVID thing, a lot of businesses need even more than 6 months. So that's what you should always be striving for. Number two, leverage your CPAs. Hire a CPA to come in and do a compilation of your business. Ask them, get somebody that's experienced in your industry, that compare what your business is doing with other businesses to see whether you're doing better or worse. Very, very important to do. Do a forecast. Most of my best clients do 90-day forecasts. So they take what their operations are year to date, they put it on a spreadsheet, they look forward 90 days. Looking your overhead out for the next 90 days trying to forecast your sales based on your backlog, your pipeline, what your prior year sales are, and then rolling that all into any additional big payments you think you might have to make for taxes or debt. There shouldn't be any surprises in a 90-day period. And you want to do this once a month, continuing to roll it forward every 90 days. I'm only telling you that my smartest clients are the ones that do this, and they're never surprised by what impacts their cash flow. Revisiting your supplier agreements, very important as well. Pay your suppliers twice a month. Make it the 10th and the 25th of each month, or the first and the last Tuesday. Do not pay in between. That way you have complete control on the cash that is going out of your business. And if any of your suppliers are still kind of silly enough to be offering like discounts on early payment, like net 10 discounts, take advantage of that, because the savings on that well exceeds whatever you're earning in your bank account right now, which is next to nothing. So pay them a couple times a month and leave it at that. Finally, there are 3 great technologies that will help you with your cash flow that I recommend. I love Plastic. Plastic will let you pay by credit card to any vendor, whether or not they accept credit cards, because you're basically paying through Plastic. Plastic sends the payment over to them. They send them a check or an automatic payment, an electronic payment. That way you can use your credit card. So you can work the float, you can get points, you can make bigger purchases depending on what your credit line is. And if you buy stuff internationally, you can do it that way as well. So it's a pretty cool service and something I've got a lot of clients that are turned on to. Plastic is good. Receipt Bank will take any documents that you are getting, any invoices from your vendors, and they will automatically be able to scan them and bring that data into your accounting system. They compete with a company called Bill.com. It's all automatic. It's behind the scenes. You can approve it first, but it gets the middleman out. No data entry being done. Automatic and fast, scheduled for payment. For people working from home and remotely, it saves a lot of time. Finally, Rate Networks is a managed service provider. So if you've got any accounting systems, bookkeeping, databases, whatever, get them out of your office, have it hosted by another company. Rate Networks is one of the companies that do just that. Relatively inexpensive. That way you can have people working anywhere. They're all accessing it. It's backed up, it's secure, it's safe, it's accessible wherever they are. And that way it saves you time, saves you money, helps your cash flow as well. These are just some things I'm seeing people do this year. Okay, let's wrap things up. True or false? Updating your operating system is a significant defense against ransomware. True, right? That's the most thing you want to be doing. Make sure to get an IT person to go around and check with all of your employees. The hackers are looking for older operating systems they can compromise. If they see somebody's running a recent version of Windows, the most recent, yeah, it's not guaranteed, but they don't want to even waste their time with that because it's too much work. There's too many other people not doing that they'll spend their time on. Everybody has to upgrade their operating systems. True or false? COVID proved that disaster plans aren't important. Obviously false, they're very important. They proved just the opposite. True or false? Plastic will let you pay any vendor with a credit card. Also true. You take that credit card, you're basically paying Plastic, and they're the ones that arrange for the payment, and then you can use all the benefits of your credit card. True or false? Up until 1915, it was legal to mail a baby as long as he or she was under 15 pounds. False, the baby had to be under 11 pounds for you to mail. 11 pounds, and then you can put it right through the postal system. True or false? Abraham Lincoln was actually a woman. I didn't realize this, but according to this media publication, apparently that is true. He was a woman, and not only that, what I have just recently learned is that John Wilkes Booth was probably her jilted lover, which is just, right, who knew? And finally, true or false? According to the Journal of Microbiology, 80% of fast food drink dispensers contain fecal matter. That's false. It's just 50%. You have to worry about it. I thought it was 80% at first as well, but it's not. It's 50%, so we're all good. All right. Remember to have great metrics. Remember we talked about that a few hours ago? Remember to have great economists that you follow. Remember to take some strategies and actions if you're, to fight against inflation. A Biden presidency, a little bit tougher for businesses potentially, but maybe a little bit less chaos. Main Street lending, look into that. Workers' comp savings, just a few significant funding options, and then labor disruption, distressed equipment sales, work from home. These are all opportunities for business to make more money, take advantage of what's going on with COVID. Always be looking ahead, guys. Make your decisions now. They will impact your businesses over the next 2 to 3 years. Very, very important that you always keep your eye on the ball and look ahead. This is a time of opportunity, not a time of distress. So, want to buy my book? It's called Want More Cash. It just came out a few weeks ago and it's available on Amazon. So feel free to get that as well. And finally, true or false, you are much smarter than you were a mere 90 minutes ago. That is true. This is my email address. Email me with any questions, or if you'd like a copy of this PDF, I'm more than happy to send to you. Robert, I think I'm done. So let me turn it back over to you.
Very good. Thank you, Gene, so much for the valuable insights. Take advantage of that email address. Be sure to write that down. Make sure that you get a hold of Gene. You get a copy of this presentation, this PDF, as well as Melissa's going to have access to the video that we've just taken, that we just recorded. Just a very quick thank you, not only to Gene, but you can see on your screen for our sponsors that provide this information to you. Without these sponsors, this type of event can be available to you, especially our RDA members, as well as the guests that have been invited by our RDA members. And I just send this out to all of our guests. Anybody that has been invited to this webinar by an RDA member, let them know how valuable you found this to be, and they'll be happy to turn you on to future webinars that we have in place. Once again, thank you, Gene, for providing this to us. Thank you for our sponsors. Everybody have a great day. Make this a fantastic week for you and your company. You take care. Thank you.